Okay.
Are we just doing it here?
Wherever you want to go.
We'll do a marker. We don't need to do that because we don't have to line up sound and video. That's fine. We'll do a marker.
Hello, this is LARP Larks.
We
did it when you did the timer.
So I was starting. I wasn't ready.
We did this together.
I wasn't ready.
You're doing it as a bit.
I was doing it as a bit. Okay, we'll do it for real.
Okay. Okay. Hi, this is LARP Larks. I'm Charlie.
I'm Danielle.
And we're going to be talking today about when you are no longer new at LARP. You feel like you can no longer call yourself new at LARP.
Yeah.
But you are still struggling. And still feel kind of new.
Yeah, I think it was because it was a problem that we had for a long time.
And still kind of have in some ways.
Still definitely have in some ways, and still don't in others.
Mm-hmm.
We're very, very glad to have made progress in that regard. But yeah, the feeling of not really, still feeling new. Even though you've been to a LARP, a few LARPs, you still feel like you don't know anything, haven't made any progress.
Yeah.
And how are people coming away with all these fantastical stories of the things what they did?
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I was just really hungry, and I got rained on, and then I went home. I don't understand.
You're like, I watched all the podcasts. What did I do?
Yeah, and we did that.
We did that,
and we were going to talk a little bit about how, what we did, what we did wrong, what we did right. Yeah.
Also, just showing a bit of hi, this exists. Hi, we're here.
Yeah.
And
definitely here.
It slowly gets better. It slowly, it gets better incrementally, and I think there are probably some bigger things that you can do to speed those things up and make it better. Depends about your access to those things. We'll talk about that later, but I feel like it's just valuable to share our experience and say where we've come from and where we kind of change the tide a bit for ourselves.
Yeah. Because it was conscious. That's the thing, and that's the really important thing for us. It wasn't just, and I think this is a really good thing. It wasn't just that one day everything started to work out, and we don't really know why. Actually, there were some really conscious changes that we made to the way we were playing the game. Yeah, that has improved on improved on improved. Our whole experience. Yeah,
definitely. And I'm glad you sort of mentioned playing, because I feel like remembering that you are playing a game.
Yeah.
And the way that works, you can probably compare it to playing games as a child.
Yeah.
And
it's all a big game of pretend.
It's a big game of pretend, and we're you have to invite people in, you have to go to other people, you have to sort of do all these different things that grease the wheels for playing.
Yeah.
It doesn't just come to you. It's not entertainment.
I think that's a summary of kind of the biggest lesson that we've learned. And I know we wanted to talk a bit about our kind of background first. But definitely the biggest lesson, if you take away one thing, if you shut the video down now and you take away one thing from it, do whatever you want.
Please.
But don't. It is the fact that you are playing, and that's really, really hard to sort of separate yourself from when you're there in person and you try and do something and then someone's like, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that's a rubbish thing you're doing. Or
no, that doesn't necessarily happen.
That doesn't necessarily happen. But or you try and do something and it doesn't really go anywhere. Nothing really happens.
Or you're just really afraid to get over that little hump to do the thing that you think is that in your imagination was great.
And it feels like, this is my reflection. This is how I feel about it. I'm like, I have failed. I have not done the thing. I have not done it right. I have not understood it properly. And in reality, I'm standing. I'm a child. I'm a little child, and I'm standing at the edge of the sandbox during playtime, and I'm seeing everyone else play, and I'm like, how do people play with the sand? In reality, I should just be jumping into that sandbox.
Yeah, and just being what is this about? Let me touch the sand and see how it feels.
Oh, I did it wrong. Okay, I'll do another go.
Yeah, but you can't do it
Exactly. You can't play wrong. No,
Yeah.
that's a very good point. You cannot be playing incorrectly.
Yeah. You can play in a way that like hurts other people, which means that you'll learn from that.
Yeah.
And hopefully learn not to hurt other people and things like that. You can play in a way that hurts yourself.
Yeah.
And you can learn from that. You know, like all
but
these.
There's no wrong. None of it is wrong.
Yeah.
Because you're learning from it.
Yeah.
The only thing, and this will come out as I suppose as we go through our background. The only thing you might do wrong, I think, is go to this giant playground and not play. Sit there and be like, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Then you're not actually. Then you're defeating yourself at the first. Very scary hurdle.
It is very scary, and I feel like putting things in, because I think we are both people that are like standing at the edge of the sandbox, being like, we both love to try and like figure things out before we jump in. I think makes me feel safe if I know how something works before I go in. Yeah, that's not how life works. No, and like LARP is almost like a weird intensified version of life in that way. But yeah, shall we jump into our background and just share what we've done? So we've both only done Empire. It's worth stating. Yeah. Which, festival LARP,
massive
weekend
scale,
long, 4 times a year.
Yeah.
I've done 5 LARPs now.
Yeah.
Due to do the 6th next week.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I've done maybe about twice as many. Maybe I've done about 10. I've sort of lost count. I used to go sort of in 2019 or late 2018 maybe. But I went very intermittently, partially because, the problem we're talking about today, it wasn't really landing for me. So I went very intermittently until there's sort of a crossover in our background, really, where we started to go together.
Well, I heard about this LARP thing, and I knew that you were going, and I was like, well, if you're going regularly, there's got to be something cool about it. It's a whole weekend as well. It's like a dedication to do that. Yeah. So I started to, I think I just by myself started to look into
Research
Empire LARP and look at the wiki and stuff, and I was like, this is actually pretty cool sounding, because I had such a weird idea about LARP initially of I think the preconceptions got to me, and it was like LARP is like the last bastion of nerddom, and I was like, I cannot cross this. Cross this void.
It is, and you can cross that barrier.
And it's not all fighting, which is a big thing for me, because I was like, I don't know if I can do all that fighting and stuff.
So I went, and I basically didn't have a good time. I knew there was something sort of special about LARP, about Empire LARP. I kept going. I could feel that there was something in it that was very, very cool and appealing. Yeah. But like the kid standing on the outside of a sandbox, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, this is an enigma. So I did a few posts. I was like, can anyone help me out? Kind of like looking for because I was going on my own. And I was like,
when you were first starting out.
When I was first starting out, I was going on my own, and that wasn't working. Couldn't figure out what I was supposed to be doing at all. And then I sort of joined a group that ran a bar. Yeah. And it was a bad experience, I think. The people there didn't role play. Yeah. They ran it very much like an actual part-time job at a weekend, and all I did was work at a bar and run errands. Yeah. And I was like, is this it? Is this the role play? Am I role playing running a bar? Or am I just doing that and I'm not actually getting... How are people casting magic? How does that work? Yeah. If I'm running a bar, I don't feel very heroic or special or anything like that. And it was overall a bad experience. Yeah, and so I went to join you and ended up at this bar and joined the same nation and stuff like that, and then I think I didn't quite know what I was getting in with your group. I almost wanted maybe some introductions or something beforehand, that kind of thing, but very much kind of just went into it, and I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was, and I feel so nervous, and I'm not experiencing the roleplay thing, and that's the part I was excited about. There are actually 1 or 2
very rare instances where I had to, like, say I was going out on, like, an errand or something, and I actually, like, ended up talking to someone and role-playing, and I was like, this is amazing.
It's happening.
And it's happening. And someone could, like, tell that I was, like, a newbie, but was, like, really, really nice to me.
Yeah.
And, like, they were just, like, peripheral, you know, I was just peripheral in their story.
Yeah.
But, like, that was, like, oh my god, that felt amazing.
Yeah.
And all I was doing was, like, running some errand, looking for some alcohol or something.
Yeah.
And that little bit of something was probably the first thing that really, like, started to, like, hook me in.
Yeah.
But we really had to talk about it.
Yeah, because we
afterwards.
went to 2 events together. 2 events together, or was it just the one?
So
like that?
we did the one, and then the second one, we were like, okay, I think things need to change.
Yeah.
Well, we think things need to change, and we decided to kind of go very much as tourists, and think about, like, what nation we might want to move to. What pulled us in. It felt like a last chance kind of thing of like, okay, we're gonna go around, we're gonna try and get some experiences, we're gonna try and, like, see what's out there, and then
make a decision on how to move forward. Because that was we realised that something needed to change. We couldn't stick with that group. It wasn't working. It wasn't providing the experience we wanted. If that was what you wanted to do, so you run a bar and not roleplay, then sure, that is out there. That's not what we wanted.
Yeah, and I will say it does sound like that's a very rare experience to have.
Yes, yeah. So not to speak to the experiences of lots and lots of people at LARP, that you went out on a random errand and roleplayed with someone off the cuff. That is far more a typical experience. I happened to have a poor start, basically, by falling in with a group that wasn't really interested in playing the actual game as I saw it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, you know, I'm going to use the sandpit metaphor a lot, I think, here. But it's like standing at the edge of the sandpit and everyone's having fun in the sandpit, and I'm like, how do I get involved in that? And I see a group of people who are selling buckets at the side, and I'm like, I'll join them.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
They're selling bucket. Oh, they know what's going on.
They know what's going on. They're selling buckets. And I'm like, I don't even get to play. I'm just selling buckets.
Yeah. You're just doing, like, trading with
buckets
and stuff. Like,
It was so. But yeah. So we took that sort of holiday in Anvil, and we came away with a grand plan.
Yeah.
Which actually took several. We didn't attend something like 1 or 2 summits in a row, didn't we? We took time to get our stuff together.
We did, because I think we went to that one at E1 last year. That was E1 last year.
E1 2023.
Feels wild.
Because so much has happened and changed since then.
And we were like, okay, we're going to make sure that we feel ready for the next one, and we're going to do all these things to try and, like, make it happen.
Yeah.
And put it in place.
We were like, we're committed. This is something we want to do.
Yeah.
We're committed to it. We're going to be conscious about it. We're not just going to go along with what other people are doing. So we decided to take time, take two. We missed 2 summits. We missed E2 and E3.
Yeah.
And then attended E4 2023. Ready to give it a go. Yeah. And it really, going into that, it really was all or nothing. I think we were committed at that point to the extent where we were saying this is the best shot we can possibly give it. Yeah. And if it doesn't land, we gave it our best shot. You know, we couldn't fault ourselves. We really couldn't let ourselves down on that. Yeah. And maybe it's useful talking about what we did, what we kind of did specifically, because some of it worked, some of it didn't. Yeah. And ultimately, as we get better and better at it, it's providing a better and better experience.
It really is. I'm like, I don't know whether to talk about, like, the first one that we did, or whether we should talk about what we did for that. I guess we'll talk about what we did for
that first one. Because it's kicked into gear since then, really.
We decided to do IC camping.
Yes.
Because we felt like we were missing a lot by camping OC. I think we need comforts. Yeah. We figured that out about ourselves. We need breaks. Yeah. So, like, having to go for a break, and that's like a 30-40 minute kind of walk basically, and then being like sitting at the tent and being like, do I get into this tiny tent and then like put the stove on to make some food or something?
It was definitely a whole thing, because we were parked, so we camped OC, and again, going as a tourist, paying attention to the things that aren't working, trying to make adjustments. We camped OC, and you're right, it was a long walk to and from the tent. It was a small tent as well, so it wasn't exactly the nicest space to be in OC, and just disconnected you from the world entirely. You were no longer in Anvil, and that can be a good thing for some people. They need to get away from it, but for us, it just sort of made the experience more jarring and sort of stilted and staggered.
Yeah, I think with the way that we wanted to play the game, which was to be around, to feel like we were in it, to feel like it was easy to jump into it and also come out of it as well. Whereas like you can feel a bit marooned on the field, I think, when we're like just, it feels so segmented and you feel like you have to stay on the field to get as much as you can out of it. And I think for some people, obviously it will work. I think when people say fight and things, it works really well to camp OC, because you can just, completely like relax out of that afterwards. It really depends, I guess, on your personal preferences.
But we made the decision to camp IC. I would always say to camp, IC, if you think you can do it, you're just going to be naturally more involved in the world if you're camping IC. You don't have to be on a main stretch of road, And I was just thinking, like, we do know of some people as well that seem to have like a base IC, but don't actually camp sleep
in IC. So there are different ways to do that.
I think it's about, at its core, it's about having somewhere where you can rest in character on the field. If you have somewhere you can go back to and reset, and if that place isn't off the field, if you have the ability to come on the field at time in, leave at time out, and your needs are fully met while you're on the field for that whole time, that's great, because you're not losing time traveling off the field. So we did that. I wouldn't change that ever. No. Just maximizes the time you're spending on the field. Something else we did, and this is the big thing really, was that we brought something to the table. So
this was huge.
This was a big, huge thing. This altered the game for us really. And ended up opening just doors everywhere.
So we decided that we wanted to bring like a thing, like an offering, I guess, like create like an offering that represented like the kind of game that we wanted to play. And we decided to make basically our own tarot cards based off of the game and things like that. They like basically combine it with something from the game. So in Empire, Liao Dreaming, which is a very simple ceremony that priests can do. We decided we wanted to be priests as well. And we decided to put tarot kind of over that and be like, we can create these like Liao dreams using cards that we made ourselves and create this like interesting experience. And I think that came from one, I'm now sort of remembering, there was a particular vibe that I liked the idea of having in the game when I first went to LARP, which was this idea of having some kind of like witchy person who's like, come into my tent and I will tell you all these things, and like that kind of situation where like you are like drawn into this thing and then suddenly you're in like a very intense experience, like a roleplay this kind of like one-on-one, and that idea of like being drawn into
so there's lots of layers here really, because we're not saying you should all be tarot readers. That's not quite how it works. What we wanted was, when we go to LARP, we wanted that type of roleplay experience. We wanted quiet, sort of intimate roleplay moments with people. And we wanted, and really that was it.
A way to get deeper, basically.
A way to get deeper in with people. And it was genuinely a case of, if we can do that and nothing else, we are happy to go to LARP. That was the level we were at. We said, if we can just have some of those moments, we will be happy. And we facilitated that by doing the tarot card reading stuff.
It gave us something to get excited about, like a way to participate in the game.
Yeah.
On our own terms, because we could have been like, we're going to be priests and we're going to figure out like a judgment to put in place or something. And that could have been part of our first game. And we probably could have made connections along the way there.
Yeah.
But I think just having something where it's like, we created this and this represents what we're about. I think that was really special to be able to do. Yeah.
You know, there are loads and loads of different ways you can do it. You can run a pub. You could, you know, sell things, make things, etc.
Yeah.
There are lots and lots of different ways of going about it. But at its core, for me, it is about the idea that what you are bringing to LARP to do within the context of the world, you'd be happy if just that happened.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely starting out, and this is definitely where we were.
Yeah.
You can't really guarantee anything more than that, I don't think. Things might happen, and you might suddenly the ball might pick up, and you might get rolling really, really quickly on a bunch of things. But ultimately, as long as you're happy with that, you know you've got sort of agency over that, so you can make sure that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's almost a way of holding yourself accountable to something, to be like, I have put effort into this thing, and I'm excited enough about this thing that I want to invite people into this kind of play, because I think what happens is like you can have that kind of cornerstone to go to and also kind of hold yourself to that.
Yeah.
But then the other side of that is you're saying like things might not happen, but you might be too just like nervous.
Yeah.
Because I think for those other things to happen, you do have to throw yourself out there and be a bit vulnerable and open to help and stuff like that. So there's like that level of like in LARP, you kind of do just have to like throw yourself into unknown situations
very much so.
and see what occurs. But I think having that like thing to really hold on to that you really like, that you'd be happy to do, I think it's a great thing to have.
And we're at the point with it now where we still do it. We do it all the time. We do it every evening. And last event specifically, and maybe every event going forward, our days and nights felt full. You know, it felt like
the second night.
Certainly, well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But it felt like we were always kind of doing something.
Yeah.
And that was a brand new feeling, because people always talk about being bounced around at LARP to like this and that, and they never make it to everything. And I was like, well, it'd be cool to have something to do.
Yeah.
And literally, like last event, I ended up thinking, are we going to actually be late to our own thing, our own tarot readings, because we're running out of time and we've got to like do all these other things that have come up.
Yeah.
And being like, that is valuable to me and we're going to do it, kind of helps you stick by it. The point I wanted to make, I wanted this sandbox analogy, sandbox metaphor.
Yes.
I would say that it's a matter of like choosing your sandcastle. I would say that there are people who, you know, go to LARP and so I don't do fighting, so this is going to be my comparison. They go to LARP and they fight. They want to do the combat at LARP, and if they get to do combat at LARP twice a weekend, they're happy.
Yeah.
Anything else that happens is a bonus, and that again, that's their sandcastle. That's what they want to do with their weekend. We wanted like a different, intimate roleplay experience. That's our sandcastle.
Yeah.
You got to pick what you're gonna build first, and even if you're building it by yourself, make sure that you'd be happy just building that sandcastle for that weekend.
Yeah.
I'm loving this metaphor. It's got
pretty
legs.
good. It's pretty good. It makes me think of like because fighting can be the thing that you bring to the table. Just make sure it is like specific. Be like, am I gonna be the because being like, you can have my sword is like an offering in itself. But having maybe a layer beyond that that's more personal to you could help sort of create things.
It's got to be satisfying for you, or else, you know, it can't just be one, because that's where you said before, we could have went and said we're going to get involved in judgments in the synod and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, why do I care about that as a player? Why is that important to me? And it wasn't important to me until I understood enough about the world, and then I start to care about it, and then my characters start to care about it. But yeah, you got to pick something, whatever it is, whatever you're picking, it's got to mean something to you.
Definitely,
because you're going to be doing it for the whole weekend. It's what you've paid for. It's what you travelled down for.
It's representing your personality as well.
Yeah.
In that sense of like, you're stepping into the sandbox. There are going to be some people making really delicate, lovely sand castles. There's someone who's going to be like tipping out a bucket, making a sandcastle, just like stamp on it and then like re-repeat. You know, like there might be someone who you're like, I want to do that thing.
Yeah.
But if you just start doing something in your own little corner, if you start burying yourself in the corner, someone else is going to be like, hey, can I also bury you as well in the sand? And then that's like,
I think that's great, and I think that's the important. That's kind of the natural next thing from that is that if you are doing stuff and you're doing stuff authentically, stuff you enjoy, people will see you. That will happen. If you're not experiencing the role playing contact from other people, other players, and that can be a very recursive, negative, horrible cycle to be in, because you're like, I'm alone, no one talks to me. I'm more alone, no one talks to me. Whereas if you're doing your thing, it just does happen. People are on this field to role play. So if you're doing something that is interesting, is core to you, is interesting to you, people will find you.
Yeah. So like,
I have faith in that.
Last event, I went to like a prosperity priest meeting, and I just participated in that. I had one judgment, so I was like, put my little hand up, and I was like, can I talk about my judgment? Because it's like first meeting, and so I was just like participated in this meeting in a very normal way. And then later on, we were like out looking for someone in the marches, could not find what we were looking for. No. But I just heard like, oi, prosperity priest, from someone like sat at a bar. And this was someone, I don't have like their like name or anything, but they were like a recursive character kind of throughout our weekend a little bit. Yeah. And they kind of inspired me a little bit, because we ended up having a moment where we went over to this table and they're like, we're trying to write this judgment, can you help us get the wording right? So there's like a few people working on a little judgment, being priestly stuff,
away, trying to get the right wording on the right legislature and stuff like that.
And we're priests who were like, perfect. We are here for this.
Grabbed a drink at the bar, made our way over. And
then had this little experience, and it was just like a really nice little interaction. And that person didn't even have to know my name. No. Like, I think that, for me, I would be like, oh, I don't know someone's name. But for them to just be like, I've seen you in this place.
Get here. I've seen you play in the play pit before. You want to play with us? That happens. That does happen.
Hey, you do priest stuff. Do you want to come over here? We're doing some priest stuff. And like that, it can be as simple as that. And I think that kind of inspired me on a certain level.
And I think that is such a, we like had to put our heads together. We went to multiple summits. We really like dug into like how best to do this thing. And this is kind of where we got to. And I don't think there's a better sort of way to start other than being like, I really want to do this. What can I just do to do that? But, I can't go... You're not going to walk onto field and someone else is going to engage with that conversation about the thing you're interested in. You've got to bring the thing and you're going to make the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a great way, especially for people like us, I think, a little neurodivergent and stuff like that. And a little... Just like... people who kind of want a bit more structure, bringing something, I think, is great.
Yeah, bring your own structure.
Because occasionally you come across someone who I feel like is like some neurotypical little like fancy free puppy who just sort of like wanders into LARP and they're like, I didn't do anything to prepare. And then they have an amazing time because they're just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then like,
they're putting themselves in 24/7.
I don't know anything. And it's just they have an amazing time.
Yeah. That's not how everyone functions.
It's not how everyone functions, not how we function. But like you can see that in other people and see how that works.
And it's like, how do I get that? And it's like, well, you're a different person.
You're a different person.
Have you considered bringing something that you enjoy, whatever it be, roleplay, fighting, whatever, knowing you can do that, and then you'll get seen for it. It will happen.
Yeah. It makes me think of like the day. Lots of like kid analogies now in my head. The day where people bring games to school.
Yeah, toy day.
Like toy day. I don't know. Yeah, but people bring all sorts of different things. possibly a lot of people influenced by their parents or something to bring something that can be shared.
I used to bring a Game Boy.
I knew it.
And I used to play by myself. Oh no, I didn't used to play by myself. We used to trade Pokemon over the Game Link cable. That's what we used to do.
So I was literally just about to use an analogy of like the kid that brings like the Game Boy because like there is you're different, okay? You're a different kid.
Oh, what?
And
oh no.
You brought in your Game Boy, and like you could have been sat alone, but some other kid was like, "Oh my god, can I trade Pokemon with you?" And then that's great because you brought a thing. You're like, I like this. I specifically enjoy my Game Boy.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of anything else that I would prefer to bring to this. And then another kid sees that, and because you brought that, and that was you being authentically yourself.
Yeah. There's like actual connection.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that I would trade. I think I traded a Metapod for a Lapras with a boy named Jacob, and I'd never talked to Jacob before in my life. But because we both bought that Game Boy, we connected over that, and I've had his Lapras on my save file of Pokemon Yellow for years, and then I deleted it, started again, but happens. But yeah, no, I think that's great. So bring something. Another thing that we did, we were like, we gotta do this before we go to LARP is, and this will be no surprise if you've seen any of the other videos on our channel, it's the winds. For us, the winds of fortune. There are winds of war as well, but we...
Should we just define the Winds of Fortune first?
Yeah, go for it.
Winds of Fortune, because Empire is such a huge game, between games, the writer will basically like write lore that's happened in the game, sort of in between each summit. So the Winds of Fortune is like responding to the previous summit, and it might provide things that you can do within the next summit, or things that are happening in the world that might affect other stuff. Things that are happening at the next summit, like ambassadors from other countries or something coming along. But all these kind of different things, and they are kind of terrifying to look at if you just like go look at the winds on the day before the event.
Huge blocks of text.
Yeah.
Genuinely huge articles.
And it's not just that, it's because when you're first reading them, you're like, I don't understand anything.
Yeah. They all use terminology. Yeah, it will use terminology that hyperlinks to another article that has terminology that hyperlinks to another article. So you could spend, hours and hours and hours on the wiki. Some people are like, do that. And to be honest, as much as you can do that, I think. But at the very least, get into the winds before the event.
And try and read them as they come out. They come out usually within like a couple of weeks before the event, and once they start coming out, they'll just keep consistently coming out from that point. So try and start when they start. Obviously we did videos previously. We're not doing them this time.
No.
Because it's too last minute, but we will try and read. We're a little behind, but we will try and read because we know the value of them now.
That's the thing, and again, it's something we did and we still do every time. And I think when I'm going to compare the two things that we've done. When we bring something that's valuable to us and we put it in the world, like the tarot reading, that's building like us up, and that improves our experience. When you read the winds, that brings the world around you to life. Because suddenly you start picking up on conversations that are happening in your peripheral, even conversations people have with you. They use terminology, things that don't necessarily make sense, or do because you'll be like, oh, I've read that. And then you can be like, is that this? And then that can lead to a roleplay opportunity. The winds bring the world to life around you, and so many other people on the field are gonna have that to connect with you over. They're gonna know they're gonna know the same stuff you know to an extent, as much as they can remember. And
another thing is, I think this applies to the whole wiki as well as the winds. It's not about reading the wiki or the winds so that you can participate in the game. You can always participate in the game. You don't have to know everything. You can be that puppy kid who like runs in and is like, how do I do a sandcastle? How does this work? You don't need to know about the sandcastle that Julian built last summit and how good it was. It was pretty good. It was a pretty good sandcastle. But you don't need to know about that. You could run in with no knowledge at all. But if you prefer some structure, if you prefer to have some knowledge about what's going on, and also I think the most important thing is if it sparks something in you that's the money. Because that's
the sweet spot.
You ended up doing a judgment.
Yes.
Last summit because of one paragraph at the bottom of a wind.
Yes.
And we got talking about it, and we felt like so like inspired and ignited by it.
Yeah.
And you were like, I want to do something about this.
Yes.
Like, this matters to me.
And then that becomes like something else that you can bring to the thing. Because I was like, I'm going to raise this judgment and do this thing.
Yeah.
Now that only makes sense if you know how the synod works, how judgments works, how this particular issue that I was passionate about sort of functions, and all the relevant background. So I only raised my first judgment ever after 10 summits, or after 3 or 4 summits as a priestess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's something else you can bring.
Yeah. It also generated so much game initially for you because you were like, it's my first thing, I'm scared. And then you wanted someone to like check it for you.
Yes.
So then you like immediately started something where you asked someone to check, and they were like, actually, I know someone who's better for that.
Yeah.
Passed you to someone else.
Get you bopping around people, talking to different people.
And then we all went to like the hub together and put our things down. So it just creates those like boop boop boop, those little moments of like connection, the little constellations that like just bring the game together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the wins super important. Read, absorb as much of them as you can.
Yeah.
As you say, if anything sticks out to you, if anything looks cool, follow it. Follow that as much as you can.
Yeah, get lost in the wiki and get to like a weird obscure page, and then be like, I have a weird amount of knowledge on this subject. But if it does come up, you'll be like, oh my god, let me regale you.
Yeah. So there are a bunch of things. So those are sort of the really big things that we did to help support us, and then it kind of starts to build up from there within the game itself.
Yeah.
There are other things we did that didn't work, and I think we thought about talking about those as well, because we did our little research, our tourism in Anvil.
Yeah.
We were like, okay, we have to do all these things, and actually 2-3 of them, a big chunk of what we did wasn't a waste of time, but was not energy well spent.
Yeah, especially in that first one in the league, we sank so much time into the wrong things and energy into the wrong things.
Yeah.
And it was not the wrong things, but they didn't benefit us.
There were other things we should have been spending our energy on.
Yeah. And I think the same kind of, not the same thing happened, but there was still a little bit of that in E1 this year.
Yeah.
I feel like literally just the last summit, I feel like we've got a balance. We're just starting to get there.
And it's difficult because you really do have to like feel it. If something we're about to name is important to you, and if you're making it your game and you're happy to do that for the weekend, fantastic. You absolutely go for it.
Yeah.
But if it's like, I need this to be a player, that's not true. That's not true at all.
No.
You can show up to the sandbox with a very minimal whatever these things are.
Yeah, so like the first, I'm going to put the first
let's give some context.
Yeah. So costume and set dressing are not as important as you think they are.
They're not as important as we thought they were.
No. They're probably not as important as I still think they are, but I make clothing, so that's one thing of like, I already have a certain dedication to that and excitement about it, but I think I got so sucked into feeling like I had to have like the perfect costume, the right costume. I made you your costume as well, and like,
yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And focusing in on all of that, I think actually took me away
from
the game.
Yeah.
Like, because for that, especially for that first one, E4 last year, where it was just too much focus on that basically, and then the difference between that and then this year where we've read the wins as preparation, like the amount, obviously we put time and effort into reading the wins. I probably like sunk that and more into costume that time before. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think the thing that I get wrapped up in about costume, and still do, is that like I have to like look a certain way, or a costume has to be of a certain caliber. Not even necessarily because I'm concerned about what other people will think, because it's what I want. I want to look a certain way and have my costume be a certain caliber, and then you spend ages on it, absolutely ages.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it'll be fine. The costume you've got is fine. The costume you've got is fine already. It's fine. You don't need to do anything with it. I've heard someone before say like costume kit. It's all aspirational.
Yeah.
I think that kind of captures part of it. It's kind of saying whatever you've got right now is fine, and if you want to make it better, you can do that.
Yeah.
But truly, these events are quicker than you think. They're like E1, E2, E3, E4. Even though they've got 6 weeks between them, they move quicker than you think.
Yeah.
And you could spend, if you think, I don't know, unless your character is related to clothes in some game way, and that's what you're going to do for the weekend, pouring all your energy into the costume and the set dressing and the stuff that's in your tent and things like that.
Yeah.
Where's the focus on what you want to do? You know? Because if you want roleplay, for example, how does that facilitate it?
Can it facilitate it? Because it probably could.
It could.
But you'd have to go really like out there on your costume and create something that is like, hello, I'm here to be interacted with.
And if that and if you're not doing that, do you want to do that? And if you don't want to do that, or you don't want that, well, why is costume such a high focus?
Yeah, I think, I remember like E4 last year, literally, I felt like I was like making stuff right up to time in. I brought along my like vintage sewing machine. I usually sew by hand, but I brought that along and I was using that. Yeah. We missed time in, we missed the debutante ball. We like just so much sort of like...
We missed like so much introductory roleplay stuff that could have
started us off in the right
fantastic path. But we missed it because we were focusing on costume.
Yeah. There just so much got absorbed. I remember even on Saturday, I think, I was still finishing off stuff in the morning, so it felt like that we could wear things, which is absolutely wild.
Yeah, because we were fine. It was fine. We could have most of the actual content that we role played with on that particular summer. It was quite dark. It was done at night when it was spooky, and it's not really like our costumes shone in those moments that shone to us.
Yeah, and we did so much for set dressing, and then actually our setup, it was absolutely boiling hot. Our setup was like in the door of our tent. Yeah. So while we got like a nice comment or so, we never invited someone into our tent to enjoy our set dressing.
And that's only something we've recently done, and I still feel like our set dressing isn't there yet. But also, well, it'll just happen. We'll get things. You
also,
know.
like, we've been in other people's tents and we've seen that they literally will like have like a picnic table, like a fold-out picnic table. They might put something over it, but like they're not hiding that it's a picnic table. They've got like an actual those like gas stoves like up on a side where they're doing like have a kettle on or something. Like, and that 100% fine. 1,000% fine, because you're not thinking about that when you're looking at someone in role playing.
I know. I think we were really in our own heads for a lot of the time about the standards of costume and set dressing and things like that. You don't have to be. It has to be functional. It has to be comfortable. That's about it. Yeah. And then it's up to you how much time you want to spend on it. But don't sacrifice your enjoyment. Don't sacrifice what you want to be doing at a summit.
Yeah.
In favour of that.
I feel like if you do like costume, like me, and you might not listen to me if you are like me, but I would make something that is distinctive. If you wanted to make something that's like distinctive and like helps like show who you are as your character. And if you at first just need to buy some simple things or use some simple things from your like wardrobe or from a charity shop or something, like that's better, I think, than like I'm thinking of that versus like reading into like the winds and the lore of the game. I'm like, that benefited me so much more. While I love my costume and I'll continue adding to it, that is more about me just being like comfortable, but also looking the part that I want to look like. Yeah. But that doesn't actually add anything. The one thing I would say that does add something to my game is my mask, because that's a league thing. Yeah. That's a very specific character thing.
It's not around here.
No, it's not, but like that really, I feel like adds something to my game. Yeah. I also, I guess, like having my wig. because that completely changes my look.
But and that's the thing. It's those are the things that like make your game different and make your game different in a way that like you enjoy.
Yeah.
The way that people act around you and perceive you in your mask and your wig, completely different without, and that's a positive experience for you. The way that people sort of act and speak to us once we've read the wins is completely different to if we had no idea what they were talking about. Which is important to us. Outside of stuff like that, though, it doesn't really come. Other than the odd comment of like, "There's a nice tent in here with a bunch of stuff," doesn't really come up. And I'm like, "Cool, we spent hours on that, hours and hours on that." We built a bed from scratch. We built a set of shelves, then we built a table, and then we were like, "Oh, let's build a bed." And you made a mattress and stuff.
I've made a whole like futon stuff.
And like it's great. It's great to have. Let's not sell it short. But if we'd spent that long doing something else, there's only so much free time you have between events, you know.
Yeah. I think something I almost like slightly I don't know if I regret not doing this, because obviously people could engage more online and stuff before entering into the game to try and make connections and build things beforehand. I just think I don't have like the kind of attention span or whatnot to like keep trying and engage with people like that. Stuff. Yeah, so like I will do a certain extent, but I think some people do try and do that before a game and try and make connections before things happen. Yeah, I think I have slight regrets about not putting more effort into that, but I'm like, we did what we did, and we'll make like friends and stuff on the field. Yeah, you know.
I think that ties nicely into sort of one of the next things, which I think you've said you're still shaking a bit. I know I'm still shaking a bit, which is not literally shaking, but we're trying to get rid of a little bit. Yeah, which is wanting to appear capable. And I want you to know now that I've been to 10 LARPs. I don't know anything. I'm a tiny baby. I don't know. I'm just rolling around in the sand. I have no idea what's going on at any of these LARPs. Really, truly. I don't want anyone ever to think I'm capable, because every fantastic interaction I've had on the field has started with me being like, what is going on? What is happening here? And there is a very hard mental barrier to overcome when you're on the field, especially for your first time. You've done all the reading, you've got your thing that you've prepared, and you're like, well, I know it all now, don't I? I want my character to be capable, and I'm capable, and it's all going to work out. And I think that can actually drive people away sometimes.
I think it can harm you, because I think you're probably putting out the wrong energy, and I'm thinking about when you did your last that was it. I feel like in the last sort of summit or so, through a novella, you kind of learned about questions, you know?
Yes.
You've like started asking questions, just like sort of not blunt questions, just straightforward questions
that like cut to the core of what someone hasn't said. Basically.
Yeah, and that is, I think, really valuable and puts something out there. Whereas sort of being quiet and reserved because like you feel like you should know a thing, and you are too afraid to speak up and say that you don't know a thing, or you're like, my character would know this, and it's like, well, maybe that's like actually like a problem in the character creation there, where I think because LARP relies on like hard skills, because ultimately you are your own avatar, basically, like your skills, your everything is what's going to be in your character, and then you could get to sort of filter some things out, and then maybe add in like a tiny little bit more. But like apart from that, I think initially you still have to kind of be like, I'm not really sure about stuff. Can I learn about stuff?
You have to be, really. Because you could, there are loads and loads of ways that LARP is different to D&D, but I often see them compared because people make the jump from one to the other. And you can play a character in D&D and you can say, I've made a very intelligent wizard. And then when they have to think about something, you can roll for it. And unfortunately, there is no rolling in LARP. So when your very intelligent wizard doesn't know like what a ritual is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this feels bad, because I should know it. And the mistake, you're right, was in character creation, was in saying my character knows all these things.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the hard skills necessarily to back that up.
Yeah.
You're way better off saying my character, you know, is interested in learning about these things or something like that. Because then you have in-character ways of being like, what is this? What is happening? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I just think about that like a neurotypical player, the puppy dog player who runs in and is like, what's this? I don't understand what's going on. This place is crazy. And then people are like, it's this thing. And no, you're in a conversation then.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like there are those people who, like, the very cool people, you know, that will, like, pick up on that and are happy to, like, bring people in and bring them up to date. Because ultimately, you're just a new person to play with, which is great. Yeah, you know, and it's like, okay, well, let's get someone up to date with where the game is at. Let's be like, all right, you come to my sandcastle. This is the idea. This is the vision for the sandcastle. Cool. You in? Good. And now I can actually play with you. And like, I think we need to remember that those moments of like teaching are not like being a burden on someone or anything like that.
People love it. It's part of the game.
Yeah, it becomes part of the game. And I don't think I've really come across anyone who's like, ugh, newbies. I hate describing things to people.
That's genuinely never been a thing.
Yeah.
I remember when those people came up to us in the queue for Synod and asked us some questions about stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I cannot wait to tell you what I know, basically.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I can't wait for someone else to tell me what I don't know.
Yeah. We had like the newbiest noobs come up to us in the queue and they had a little like questionnaire type thing, and it was like find a priest in the synod queue. They had this little task to do, which obviously the synod queue is basically all priests. So it was very fun that they like picked us out, and then we were like, we get to tell you about things now, and that's very exciting.
That was great, and we enjoyed that, and we remember it, and it was a good experience. It's a good, someone asking us how something worked was a great roleplay experience for us that we remember. And I think that can be difficult if you want to appear capable, if you want to appear like strong or knowledgeable. Unless you have the hard skills, it's not going to happen genuinely, and you're going to get such better roleplay experience from being vulnerable and saying, I have no idea what's going on. Yeah,
and I would argue, even if you feel like you do have the hard skills, like imagine if you have like read so much of the wiki, there are still things on field that are different from the wiki, or that like have diverged from it, or that kind of happens separate from the wiki a little bit.
Or even someone might be pushing the truth slightly. There might be someone with an agenda, and this is where it gets complicated, especially if you're like a bit neurospicy. It's like, oh, I didn't know that, my bad. And it's like, they were role-playing with you, my dude, and they're lying to you. And it's like, oh, fuck, there's layers of abstraction here that I'm struggling with. So genuinely, just to go along with a completely open mindset is the way forward. And I wanted to do the sandbox metaphor as well with it. And I'm just imagining appearing capable at a sandbox, like we're all playing.
Yeah, like I know what's going on. Here.
You don't have like. What does being capable of playing around look like? Because that's ultimately what that is, right? You're saying, oh, I kind of know all of this and I get it already. But the thing you get is like playing around and having fun. Because that's what everyone on the field is doing or trying to do.
Do you know who that kid is as well? Sometimes this kid is also like a neurospicy kid as well. It's the kid that goes in and is like, I know how to do this sandcastle. And sometimes can be the person who's like, you're doing it wrong. Yeah. You're actually not doing sandcastles the right way. This is how we do sandcastles over here. Yeah. And that kid probably just ends up like not playing with other kids. Because like there's a certain level of like, we've got to accept that to play with each other, we've got to be a little flexible, a little open. Yeah.
For me, if I'm the kid on the sandbox, how I process it is, I think I know how to build a sandcastle. I think I know. And then I go over to the sand pit and people are doing it like differently. And I'm like, I'll just watch. I'll watch how they do it and I'll learn. But in reality, if I like waddled up and I was like, hey, what is this? It's different to what I was imagining.
Why is your sandcastle
like this? And then they're going to be like, sit down and we'll show you why.
Yes.
That's great. And that's the game. And suddenly you're talking to people, you're with groups of people, you figure out what's going in the world. Yeah. You're slowly figuring out and this is part of where the ball gets rolling, just figure out what you find interesting on the field.
Yeah, we had a nice interaction at a cafe last time, which is also, if you go to stuff like a cafe, talk to people. Just talk to people if they're there, because I feel like you're not going to go and sit at a cafe and be like, I want to be alone, you know? Especially if it's like a shared table or something like that. Just talk to the people there, because we got talking to some like magicians, and like
you actually had they actually talked to us. I'll give them the credit, because you had a piece of literature that they asked about.
Yeah, I picked up like one magic-y kind of thing from the library, and they were like, what's that? That looks like some like mathsy magic stuff.
Crunchy magic stuff.
And so we got talking, and like further down in the conversation, they asked us if we were new, and we're like, actually no, we're just like, no, we just don't know anything about magic at all. Like, and we're just like, and we had like a whole,
and actually that experience has shaped probably part of our next part of our next thing, because now we're like, let's explore this aspect of magic, getting to sit down and, you know, not know anything about this topic to the extent where we get asked if we're new to Anvil, and we're like, no, we just don't know anything about it. We may as well be new to Anvil. Yeah, absolutely. What's going on?
Yeah.
That has like guided our roleplay experience. It was a positive experience, and it's going to create more positive experiences. I hope we get around to following that up.
Yeah. That's gonna be cool. I think that'll be cool. Yeah. So little things like that, where it's like, just strike up conversations with people and try and just pick up on something about them, maybe that they've got on show, or
if you don't, even if you haven't, I'm imagining you don't know anything about the world, you don't really know, and you ask someone what they've been up to.
Yeah.
You know?
Honestly,
and it's gonna take literally 20 seconds before they say a word you don't understand, and you're gonna be like, sorry, what is the Semilak?
Yeah.
Who is Sadogya and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna come, like, it's gonna be like, what are those words? What are you talking about? And you're gonna get involved in a discussion about that aspect of the game, and you're gonna find out if you like it.
Yeah. You might have even like read part of the winds and be like, oh, I know something about that, but tell me more.
And you can be like, this is where, like, if you really get into the winds and you can kind of think what your opinion is on things. Because if someone says, I was involved in this thing, and you can be like, oh, I heard about that, and I have this opinion on that already.
Yeah.
How does that actually match up with stuff on the field? And then you get discussing, and maybe they have a contrary opinion, maybe they're the same opinion. I found with a lot of stuff, I'd made a judgment call on stuff I'd read in the winds, and I got on the field, and the first person I spoke to about it thought something differently.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I didn't even. I just again, a neurospicy thing. I was like, I didn't even consider thinking differently. And but it was like, I was like, am I persuaded? Am I not persuaded?
It makes me think of like that kind of synod queue kind of magic, where like someone's talking about something, and like, if you know just a little bit, you know, just enough, and you've got an opinion on something, someone might turn around to you and be like, oh, hold on a second, I can tell you a bit more about this thing. Or you'll be like, actually, there's like more about this that you need to know, or I disagree with that, or you know, like, things like having opinions is great. I think forming some opinions, fab. Having things that you like and want to share, great.
If you wanted to get into the core of some good roleplay quickly, here's a tip that just sprung to mind.
Yeah.
Go have some controversial opinions publicly.
Oh yeah, we like that.
If you just like go into places and like say, I don't think that's right, I think it's this. Like, that's taking it a step further, you know, not just being like, I don't understand this, being like, I've got this really strong opinion that I know is quite controversial on things. People are just going to gravitate to you and be like, what are you talking about? You're going to get inquisitive. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to know what you think about this, because sometimes I hear people being like kind of heretical in like a,
I think it's awful,
challenge me kind of way.
Yeah.
They're like, come at me, or like, I think badly about the Empire or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's the best way to go about it. To be like, I am generally heretical or something, and hope that that makes game. I think sometimes people can be like, oh, like, I'm very heretical, and like never really get picked up on it, because it doesn't quite get like deep enough or specific enough. Yeah. Whereas if you have like a very specific opinion that like just so happens to be heretical or something like that, or you know, it like
I think if you have a very specific opinion, absolutely, you end up in discussions, and if it is a heretical opinion, heresy is going to come up as part of it. But I think that the problem with sort of being like, I'm generally kind of bad, who's going to challenge me on it, is, well, no one. If you're not actually annoying anyone, if you're not actually getting on anyone's bad side, if you don't have any opinions that people disagree with, if you're not, threatening people or cursing people or things like that, then no one's going to do anything about it, because you're not actually playing with anyone. Again, you're standing on the edge of the sandpit and being like, I'm better than all of this.
Yeah, I got an idea earlier this year that I was like excited about, and it's this idea of being the bad guy in someone else's story.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
I was starting to build certain opinions on certain ways of like life and certain like ways that people act in the game, and I was like, I can be their bad guy.
Yeah.
I can be the guy that fucks up their day in a way that I'm not like actively just like, I'm gonna ruin this person's life, but the way that I want the world to be is just completely my character wants the world to be is completely at odds with what this person or this group or whatever is doing. And I think that really fuels me, I think. Rather than being like, I hope someone likes me going out into the world, being like, I have things I want to do, and if you get in my way, then I guess you're gonna like.
I completely agree, because the sort of plot that I'm following at the moment, it's kind of like some half self-made, half happening in the world stuff. The stuff that I'm following and the line that I want to track down, I could, depending on the way I word it, even in a conversation, let alone a judgment, I could see some people being like, "Whoa, what are you talking about? You can't say that." And I'm like, "Perfect, challenge me on it. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about that?" And I think that's great if you're like being someone's, because I think your character maybe disagrees with my angle as well sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes even like out of character, you'll just like mention something, and I'm like, like, I'm like, we do live in like a theocracy and an empire at the end of the day, like, but yeah, I think there are some things there, and I was just reminded by that of someone in the hub in the synod, priest. We're all looking at the wall of judgments, sort of reading through, noting down what we might vote yes or no for, and this Dornish person just went, I disagree with that. They like pointed at one specific judgment and they just declared it. I don't think they were with anyone talking about it. They were just like, disagree with that, don't like that. And that was perfect, because someone was like, why don't you disagree with that? Like, and because people are like wanting to be influenced. They had
such like an aggressive energy kind of thing. ANTI, like they would, because I remember that person as well. They would like jot down the judgment number and they would be like, 47's bullshit. And
it's like
that.
Perfect.
And I'm like, huh? But then I'm like, huh? Stuff like that. So I think that's great. Just being being a baddie is easier than you think. It just takes a little courage sometimes.
And like, as in real life, you just going about doing your thing, living your life, you're probably gonna step on someone's toes at some point if you're doing anything interesting. So I think just applying that to LARP, and also giving that as like a playground for that kind of action.
And I think that's where you start getting into the stuff that we're getting into now, which is unpacking what's important to your character. And I think that's a whole separate topic. That's not something that you should be looking at in your first, your second, or your third or fourth event, really. You don't need to know what is important to your character straight away. There's no reasonably, I don't know if you're ever going to understand enough at your first few events to know actually what is important to your character, or even understand what the actual dynamic of the roleplay looks like to know whether or not you enjoy it. If I think after a good amount of time, you'll start to understand what's important to your character and why, and because you enjoy role playing it out in person. And I don't think you should start with that. And we never have. We've started with those sort of projects rather than super big goals.
Then it can just lead you in the right directions, and people will pick up on what you're doing and like it and stuff. I think something when it comes to character creation, I recently watched, it's a few months old, but it's an interview that To Have and To Roll did, and it's absolutely full of gems, so I'll link it down in the description and stuff. But this person was talking about character creation, and they were saying, in your first character, do yourself, your character's yourself, but add in one thing that isn't you, and make that the thing that stands out about you.
Okay.
And I think that's like a lovely little, there we go.
A little cheat.
Yeah, to be like, you don't have to be, like, for me, like, I like the idea now of not, basically, like, building into my character to be more open-eyed, more ready to ask questions and try and understand things properly. It doesn't have to be in a, like, happy little puppy kind of style, but it can just help me in that moment of getting over myself and being able to go, like, actually, what
sort of
is
pushes
this?
you out of things.
Or asking for help. I think that's a big one. To be like, I think to be open enough to say, hey, my character's like struggling with this thing, like, then I think that can lead you down so many paths. Because I ended up talking to another priest at some point, and they actually pointed that they're a pride priest, and they were like, actually, maybe you have like a courage problem. Maybe we should talk to a courage priest. You know? And so it's like, that was a great conversation there, because they were like, you seem to have pride. Your pride is good. Like, so there was like a really cool conversation, and then that has got me to a point where I'm like, okay, maybe I'm going to seek out a courage priest. But I need to seek out who that could be. But going to someone and just being like, hi, I need help, I think, with this thing. Can you do that? That's a great way to start some good role play, to be like,
yourself out there, being vulnerable.
I've heard you're really good and that you could help me. That's perfect. You know?
Sometimes I think that could get mistakenly conflated with some of the bigger imperial titles on the field. You know, if you end up with like a big imperial title, you end up as like you know, one of the, you end up as a cardinal, or you end up as an archmage, or you end up as a senator, and those people are always talking about how busy they are. I'm like, it's possible to get access to those people and ask them for help with their things if that's the direction you want to take your game in. But there are so many other people in that sphere that you could also be asking for help. But don't get trapped into, well, it's got to be this person whose name's on the wiki. I'm like, you gotta. There are thousands of other people on the field, and all of them. Some of them are going to be interested in the same things you are. So dig into whoever they are, find out who they are. And
you don't know what it's going to be like to play with them as well, because you might have someone who you might value senators. You might think they're great, and want to get connected with them. But then you might speak to someone else, and actually, they had a previous character and they were senators for like years or something, and like, you just don't know, because like, we're just taking each other on face value when it comes to like role playing, and that's kind of the magic of it, of like, do you want to play with me in my current state, as I am now, with all my like faults and interesting things and quirks and stuff, you know? I want to move us forward to talk about how it's still getting better, because the things we've done and the foundation we've built have meant that conversations have started to stick now, and game has started to build, and things are just getting better and better and better. There are still things that we want to do, we want to look forward to and change. Sorry, I'm just got a thought that connects all up to this. We volunteer at a local park. Yes, we do. I don't know where this is going. So we volunteer at a local park, and we like have a certain level of like comfort and ease with the people around us. We feel like very much like part of that like community, and that just came from turning up every week, you know. And it's like, at first, you know, it's gonna be a little bit like, we don't know, like when you're saying having like a cup of tea and a biscuit and stuff, and like trying to talk to people, it's like, and like, can I take a biscuit? Now I take 3 biscuits. I take all the biscuits I want. So it's just it's about biscuits, but it's also about people, and it's about it's about biscuits. It's about biscuits. And like, we kind of knew that we just had to commit to turning up, and then we would eventually feel like part of it, and that happened, and it's great. And I think the same attitude needs to be applied to LARP, where we are seeing some of the people at the same time. Like, people are seeing us come time and time, and so just that literal proximity to people, not even having full-on conversations with people, but just being like, I've literally like seen you around a bit.
You start building a community.
You start like being like, oh, maybe I'll talk to this person next time. Oh, and it feels a little easier to do that.
We literally had that with the magic stuff, where we were like, saw someone's name on the wiki, and we were like, oh my god, we know this person.
We've seen this person in this meeting, and that's great, because then it just feels like, oh yes, I can go to you. And
rather than it becomes like, okay, I've got to track down this person I don't know. It's like, it's you. I'm going to speak to you.
Yeah. It just feels a little bit closer, a little bit easier every time.
So it does get better over time, just with going and I mean, you've got to meet the people, you've got to interact with them. But yeah, you get there.
Yeah, and I think the thing with LARP is like, no matter how like kind of like, I'm thinking like the first time it was so difficult. Like so, I was basically like having had a couple of like panic attacks basically during that whole thing, and like being able to still come away from that and be like, but there's something in LARP.
Yeah.
And I think I want to go back, even though that was so like terrible and terrifying. But there's something about it, and I want to go back for it. And each time, it's like that, like our time just gets like slightly better and slightly more full of things. And we do those little things to look after ourselves a bit better. So we just feel a bit more at ease with ourselves. And we make the journey easier, things like that. And then it balances out. And then there's still more. There's still more we want to do and improve on and get there.
Yes.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. One of the things we want to do, because it's just us that go, we go together, is we want to bring more people, really. We want to bring our friends from real life. People we know. Yeah. There's like a lot of advice out there where it's like, come with people, come with a group, come with like, that's the best thing you can do. And I think it is, we kind of like figured out like, that is better. And because we're still going this time as like just the two of us as a couple. And I think it's going to be exciting to have people in. I think we're going to have at least one person at E4 with us. Yeah. Maybe two. Yeah, and hopefully just like keep gathering it becomes people and bringing people in, and I think that's partially reflective of like the type of experience we want as well, because for me, having our tent to be like a base, be like a hub, have people going in and out of it, that's what I want. That's kind of like why we did all the set dressing, and like having that as a thing that happens. It's hard to get it with people you don't know on the field and you get to know over time, because your tent is still like your private space. No one's going to come rushing into your tent without a good reason and consent beforehand, because they're specifically out of bounds. But the bringing people with you creates so much more like life just instantly. Yeah, you're just going to have people who want more and different things, and more of a chance, like less pressure on like each other to like go and do things at the same time or whatever. So I think we originally said that 2 is probably the worst number of people you can go with. Because 1, you're on your own. Sink or swim, you've got to go find people and interact with them. There is no other way. 3 or more people, you've kind of got a dynamic where one person can be doing something and 2 people can be together, or all 3 of you or 2 people. You know, it's there's enough variety in the combinations of people that can be doing things that it creates a dynamic weekend. 2 people can be a struggle. I think it can be a struggle, especially like I guess like as a couple and stuff as well, where like we're like role play with each other, like it can happen, but it's just also like we're doing that when we're outside the tent, and I think adding just like even one other person to the mix is like, okay, now we've got like dynamics, now we've got things happening going on, and we can figure out how we're all like connected to one another. Whereas I think we struggle to bring that to the table otherwise. With just us, just us. And there's also some traps that people can fall into when it's just 2 people. You do end up doing everything together sometimes, which isn't always the best thing you could be doing. You end up, or you can end up leaning on one another when in reality you should be pushing yourself or each other to go meet other people. Your social needs can be met by the other person, but you're supposed to be socialising with other people, so that there are some traps you can fall into as well. Like a big part of LARP roleplay, I feel, especially with a big festival LARP like this, is like
telling stories to one another, and that's often sometimes just like what you've done that day, or what, like, something from your character's past and that kind of thing. And we can't really do that with each other if we're spending most of the day together. But when we have gone and done our own things and separate things, and coming back together and be able to talk about that, that's nice. So like I think that is like what we want to create and keep moving towards.
And I think it gets easier and easier if you bring more and more people. You get to know more people, even in some select circumstances where you meet people on the field and they might join your ensemble as well. I want to also highlight because you talked before about that person that sort of formed part of our weekend accidentally.
Just like,
and there was a moment where it was really
the like OU prosperity priest
the OU prosperity priest person formed kind of an intimate part of our weekend throughout. And there was a moment where on the sort of morning of Sunday morning, we knew that we didn't have anything to do first thing, and we were like, we specifically want to have breakfast in character and chill, basically. And I think we were doing a little crossword in the Oathright. And we were having our breakfast, and they strolled by and they joined us for not necessarily for breakfast. They didn't eat with us, but joined us to do the crossword and chat with us. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like to have people here that
just
you
like come by.
You know them, or they might be in your group and stuff like that. Just to have people, I'm like, this is fantastic. This feels like so much more like. There's so much more air, so much more room. All just of a sudden,
it's like the humdrum stuff of life, I guess, where you gotta eat. You can also you can run around the field getting titles and stuff, but sometimes you just gotta like sit down with your breakfast and do a crossword, and like to have people to join and do that is like really nice. And like I think just those, like, it's so interesting as well, like how just those like tiny interactions with people really can just like inspire you and give you something to kind of like build upon.
Generally, like, more people, more better. And whether they come from like people you go with, people you join, people that join you, more people, more better. I want more people in our roleplay experience going forward.
And I think this is something that you have to continually like remind yourself of, or at least I do within the game, is like the game is all about other people. Like you can't play this game alone. It can't be played like a video game. Like, it is literally, the game is meeting other people and interacting with them, and that can be so scary sometimes. But like getting to those points where you are actually having a little interaction, no matter how like chilled, laid back it might be, or whatever. It's really nice.
Knowing the little that I do know about LARP now, I don't think anything would feel worse than achieving some sort of goal, some sort of title, some sort of, you get like an imperial title, you get like something like that, and you achieve it alone, and therefore you don't have anyone to celebrate with. I'm like, well, what did you actually do then? Because I'd rather achieve something far smaller on like a titular level, and celebrate it with 20 people. That would feel way better, or celebrate it with 5 people, reasonable amount of people. But like celebrate it with more people. Because otherwise, like, what do you do? I'd rather imagining a situation where someone is like alone and they're like, I'm master of coin now, and then imagining 3 people to get 2 people, and then one person runs up and they're like, I got it, I'm a head snitch, and it's like, oh my goodness, you did it.
I'm actually remembering like when we both went to go and hear about our judgments, and both had passed, and we just like exited like the hub tent, and we were like, woohoo!
So much energy.
And like just that, bringing that to the table and bringing that to other people is just fantastic.
Because otherwise you're just like, cool, passed, nice, good.
Nice, done, next one.
But
got the little trophy, sign, come off my screen.
Platinum trophy it. No, more people, more better. Come with people, find people. That's the whole point. If you don't like people, it's probably not for you, by the way. I'll just also say that. If the idea is that you want to play in a sandpit alone, then this is a very busy sandpit. You're going to have to find a different sandpit, unfortunately. You're going to have to want to play with people. And like, if you don't want to, that is also fine. I'm just saying that this is not the place to not play with people.
It's just a purely sociable game, and I do feel like it can grease the wheels maybe to when people drink, we don't drink that much, so like when people drink and go to bars and stuff, you might end up having those kind of incidental interactions a bit more,
a little bit more loquacious when they've been imbibing.
But like ultimately, like you can't necessarily rely on that all the time, and like
just like real life, people who end up relying on alcohol like to socialize are people who have a social need that they want to meet, but I haven't, taken the time to figure out how to actually do it. So you lean on stuff that can hurt you. Yeah. So we don't want that. We don't want to turn LARP into something like that.
Yeah. And like I think if we can approach sort of LARP in a way of like, this is like the kind of fun. It's fun to get to know people. It's fun to pretend to be other people.
It's playtime.
It's fun to it's playtime. We get to explore different facets of ourselves as characters, which is cool. Maybe ones that we don't get access to in our everyday lives.
I get to disagree with people. I'm never brave enough to disagree with people in real life, but now I disagree with everyone.
Exactly. I get to be like, I'm struggling. I need help with a thing.
Yeah.
Like, can you help me out with this thing? And then that's just not something I readily do in my day-to-day life.
No, not when you've got Google's there. It's like, I'll just search something. I'll just do it myself. You can be very independent, and it's like you gotta like lose your independence.
Yeah. And I think it's really nice just to, when you are in those moments of just like being around people, just to be like, oh, this is what it's about. Just being around them, just having these like small interactions. It doesn't have to be super duper deep. It can just be like you standing in the queue arguing with someone and you don't know their name, you just know that they're like some kind of priest or something.
Yeah.
But like that's just the little like stuff of life that I think LARP emulates. Very well. And I think it's a concentrated version of life put into fantasy, which can be very confronting and
challenging.
I think it can put a mirror up to yourself, and it can be quite scary.
It's I found out a bunch about myself. I found out that like that I know that when I get involved in social situations in real life, I watch, I observe, I take the information in, and then I interact. And genuinely, started at a new workplace a while ago now, and it took me 4 to 6 months before I actually really started to speak to people properly, because that's how long I wait for. But that was fine until I got to LARP, and I've got a weekend, and I'm like, I can't. I'm seeing myself watching and waiting, and I can't do that. I've got to go speak to people. So I had to switch that up about myself. It kind of like forces you into being more sociable. I think of LARP as being like walking into like a completely foreign world. You don't know anything, you don't know how anything different
works.
Cultures, different customs.
Everything just works differently, and you just have to accept that you might have to bumble through it, which kind of is what life is, but like we can do other things to try and like control stuff in real life.
And you've got 2.5 days.
You're not going to understand it. You're never going to understand it. I think that kind of like encapsulates our experience. I feel like there's probably still more we could talk about.
There's
in like
loads to talk
how
about.
Like the events kind of progressed from one to the next.
Go into more detail.
I don't know if that would help people feel more like understood, I guess.
I'd love to hear, because I think what we've talked about here today is this very big general principle that I hope as many people as possible can take away, which is you're playing a game, have fun, go enjoy yourself, play in the sandbox, that kind of thing. And I personally find the sandbox metaphor very useful to return to. It helps frame my mind and how I think on things. That's sort of the big lesson. And then within the sort of narrower context, we've described our experiences and what went right and what went wrong for us in the context of the people we are and what we're looking for. So I would love to hear about from any other person. If you're watching, leave a comment basically, and let us know what worked for you, what's not working for you, what kind of help you might be looking for, or questions you have. Because if sort of the sound of this is saying, okay, no, I do need to follow up on these things, but I don't see how that applies to my specific situation. Give us your specific situation. I'd love to hear it. I want to talk about you. Yeah, because that's value as well, I think.
Yeah, I think we only know our own route in, our own difficulties that we've had with LARP, but I think it would be nice to, like, just for people to see and hear this, and then read some comments that show, like, slightly different experiences and stuff, and just to see that, like, yes, you can struggle, but it does get better. It gets better incrementally, but there's still going to be a little spark there that keeps drawing you back if LARP really is, like, your thing.
And I'll just say this as well. It's really good. Like, the feeling of it actually all working, which I feel like I got last event I really got it solidly, is thrilling. It really is. And I sort of forgot that there was more LARPs, basically, and now we're 1 week away from it. Less than 1 week away from it, and I'm like, I'm excited. I'm really excited for this. Which to be honest, in amongst a lot of kind of personal life things that need to change, and we are changing it now. It's been a while since I felt like any, like, really, really deep excitement about something brand new. And that's what LARP is. It's, like, constantly brand new and exciting. So, yeah.
I know I'm going to keep looking forward to it as well, because, like, one of the things that's happening is we're going to move soon. And I kind of love that we're going to move. Lots of things are going to change.
Yes.
But then we still get to go back to Anvil and be, like, Dolce and Novella. And I feel like in the midst of all that, we're going to be like, oh, God.
Yeah.
It'll be so nice to return to this.
Caught in a storm, my goodness.
Yeah, and, like, that, I think that's just, like, a fantastic, like, place to be with it. To be like, like, no matter what happens, what changes, there'll be, like, this little place that we can come to and enjoy this character, this moment in time, and
there's comfort in that. There's also like excitement in it as well.
I do genuinely hope that this has helped.
And I hope, I want to hear your experiences. I want to hear your guys' stories.
Oh, and if you have watched this and then gone to the next summit and, like, something has affected you, oh my God, please tell us, because that would be amazing.
If we have helped one person, I would love. I want to hear about it.
Even if you had, like, 5 minutes of cool role play in the whole weekend, like just that much.
I want to hear about it, because that brings us joy. Cool beans.
Right. So remember, he who LARPs last. Yes.
I hate it. It's so clunky.
I love it. Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.